of Turkey's illegal invasion of the Republic of Cyprus that occurred in two phases. This illegal invasion is in violation of U.S. law, the UN Charter, the NATO Treaty, and customary international law. Today, 40 years later, Turkey, a member of NATO, who aspires to be in the European Union, continues its illegal occupation of Cyprus, an EU member nation, in violation of the rule of law. Further, it's important to note that according to Vice President Joe Biden, the U.S. has now bolstered Cyprus's status to that of being a strategic partner. However, 2014 has also brought some developments to the Cyprus issue that warrants our examination and analysis, and this is what brings us here today. These developments include the trilateral Israel-Cyprus-Greece relationship, which has gone from one that is emergent to one that is vibrant and strong on all levels. As AHI observed in our leadership mission to these three countries, where we had a joint historic first delegation between Greek American organizations that included AHI, the Order of HEPA, and major Jewish American organizations, led by B'nai B'rith and the Council on Presidents. Additionally, ongoing efforts to exploit energy finds within Cyprus's EEZ and Cyprus's energy diplomacy with neighboring countries. The aforementioned bolstering of Cyprus as a strategic partner by Vice President Biden on a historic visit to Cyprus in May, and subsequent ongoing high-level engagement by U.S. government officials on Cyprus. And of course, the Cyprus issue cannot be addressed without addressing Turkey, which recently held national elections. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot on our plate here today, but before we explore these developments and what the future may bring, it is important to look at the present, and we are honored to have Ambassador of Cyprus, George Chacalli, and Ambassador of Greece, Christos Panagopoulos, to provide us with their perspectives. Moreover, it is also important to look through the lens of history and to provide us with a perspective. And for that we have the founder of the American Hellenic Institute, Gene Rossides. Before I call on Ambassador Chacalli to come to the podium, just some ground rules, since we are now in the middle of baseball playoff season, and I know we have some Nats fans in the room. And the ground rules are, turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate, so none of us can hear your very different ringtones. We are not going to give the bios of the speakers from the podium. They are there on your desks at the table there, so please refer to them. And also, the Q&A will be conducted at the end of the panel, not after each speaker. And we just ask that you walk to the back of the room there where there's a stand-in microphone, and you please ask your question and not some long comment, as much as I know you'd like to do that, so we can get more questions in. So with that, I'd like to invite our first speaker of this afternoon's discussion, Ambassador George Chacalli, to the podium. George.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gene. Thank you to the AHI for hosting this event. I think it's timely, especially bearing in mind that we're going through the 40th anniversary this year of Turkish invasion. I don't want to give a long speech. What I thought of doing, which I think is going to be useful and informative for everyone, is to read to you part of the speech that was given by President Anastasiadis at the UN General Assembly plenary last Friday on Cyprus, which basically outlines in a few minutes what our goals and what our aspirations are when it comes to a solution of the Cyprus problem, because I think this, from the big boss, puts actually things into perspective. And it's useful for everyone here to hear this from the actual horse's mouth, as it were. So let me quote the part of his speech that relates to Cyprus. 2014 marks the 40th anniversary of the violent division of my country, a consequence of the 1974 invasion and its continuing occupation by Turkey. It is not my intention to engage in a blame game, since a plethora of UN resolutions and UN Security Council decisions not only truly reflect the historic and continuing responsibilities of those who are at fault, but also condemn the unacceptable status quo and call for the reunification of Cyprus and the withdrawal of occupation forces. What I would like to stress once more is my sincere commitment to work vigorously and with resolve in order, through a constructive, in-depth and substantive dialogue, to reach a settlement that will reunite Cyprus and its people, restore the fundamental freedoms and human rights of all its lawful citizens, relieve the island from the presence of occupying troops, ensure the peaceful coexistence and socio-economic collaboration between all of its citizens, and guarantee the effectiveness and efficient functioning of Cyprus as an EU member state. For me, there is only one plan, that is, to reach a settlement of the Cyprus problem on the basis of what has been agreed as a compromise: the evolution of the Republic of Cyprus into a bi-communal, bi-zonal federation with political equality as set out in the relevant Security Council resolutions and the high-level agreements, with a single sovereignty, a single international legal personality, and a single citizenship. After months of difficult negotiations, on February 11, 2014, a joint declaration was agreed between the two communities, setting out the basic guidelines and principles for the framework of the agreed solution to be reached, as well as the methodology of the negotiating process. Following the joint declaration and intensive negotiations between the two sides, comprehensive proposals on all chapters on the Cyprus problem have been submitted. We have now reached the phase of concentrating our efforts to bridge the differences so as to pave the way forward towards a viable and lasting settlement. However, it goes without saying that what is also needed is the demonstration of genuine will by our compatriots to negotiate in good faith, and by Turkey to contribute constructively to the efforts to reach a settlement, not only in theory and rhetoric, but through practical and substantive actions. A first step towards a long-awaited demonstration of genuine political will would be the adoption of my package proposal for bold, confidence-building measures that would create a win-win situation for all parties concerned, helping build mutual understanding, confidence, and goodwill, thereby serving as a catalyst to the ongoing negotiating process. Moreover, we do expect to receive the sincere cooperation by Turkey on the humanitarian issue of the missing persons, including through granting access to all areas as required and providing the necessary information that will help shed light on their fate and alleviate the pain of their relatives. Cyprus and its citizens deserve much more than a divided country. 40 years is more than enough for all of us, and it is high time for all those involved to realize that the artificial complacency related with the current status quo is to the benefit of no one. A solution would be to the benefit of all Cypriots, of Turkey, of our immediate region, and evidently of the international community. My ultimate vision is to relieve all Cypriots, especially the younger generations, the future of our country, from the anachronistic burden of having to live in a divided country in which they are forcibly prevented from enjoying the freedoms that is the birthright of every citizen in the world. A burden that they are not to blame for and are entitled to see redressed. I will not deviate from pursuing this vision, as this is the duty I have undertaken towards all Cypriots. I will not shy away from the historic responsibility to provide a stable, peaceful, prosperous, and conciliatory future in my country." End quote. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Panagopoulos.
Thank you very much, Nick. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. First of all, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to the American Hellenic Institute and President Nick for what they are doing. AHI has always been a strong advocate of Hellenic issues and has been very instrumental in educating the administration, members of Congress, but also the public opinion of the United States on a whole range of issues that are so important to us, including, of course, and most of all, the Cyprus issue. In this spirit, permit me in a quite emotional way to welcome here the founding father of AHI, a veteran fighter who is still fighting, Eugene Rossides. His last offer is the new book. Eugene has been always a fighter for the rule of law in international relations, and he proves that in a scientific approach, no biased approach, so his latest book takes special value for all of us. Needless to say that we're waiting to welcome you in Greece and in Cyprus, where you're going to visit in a little bit, along with the current leader, Nicola Regagis, the good friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank my distinguished colleague, Ambassador of Cyprus, George Chacalli, for giving us, in a very concise way, in the many words of the leader of the Cyprus Republic, Mr. Anastasiadis, his goal, what we're looking for. I was blessed to assist in a meeting between the President Anastasiadis, where George was present in New York a week ago, with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Greece, Mr. Venizelos. It is one of the so many contacts between the Hellenic Republic and the Republic of Cyprus in our common struggle to bring justice to the island. Needless to say that our always the policy of Greece is to work very closely with the leadership of the Republic of Cyprus. We support fully, unequivocally, all the initiatives of President Anastasiadis to make a breakthrough in this 40-year dispute. And some of you have been here last year. We gave a promise not to live on the 40th. The 40th anniversary, the dark anniversary came, unfortunately. What it matters is that we do not accept the fait accompli. We are still fighting, and we're going to fight no matter how many years it's going to take. I think that George gave us the Cypriot leaders' vision for a unified Cyprus, which we do fully support. Let me just exploit the possibility of addressing you the minutes to come, just to tell you a few words about Greece. A very new element in the area is the energy sector. In the Eastern Mediterranean, Greece, Cyprus, and Israel are working closely together on developing a strategic relationship also in the field of energy. We want this cooperation to bear fruits to the benefit of all parties, and we also hope that it will help forge a climate of peaceful cooperation, democratic stability, good neighborly relations, and prosperity in our wider geographical area. This is our vision. Respect for international law and human rights is a vital pillar of any form of regional and international cooperation, according to us. The discovery of considerable gas reserves in our wider region may redefine the energy map of Europe, reducing dependence on third countries. On a national level, we share fully the US vision of increased energy security for Europe. We aim at becoming a major energy security hub for Europe. This will be achieved through our participation in international projects such as the Southern Gas Corridor from the Caspian Sea to Italy through the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, the well-known TAP. A few days ago, Prime Minister Mr. Samaras was in Baku, reinforcing this vision and taking very practical steps towards the realization of this vision. Additionally, we are considering developing a vertical axis south to north, also known as Central Gas Corridor, that will connect our LNG terminal near Athens, Revithoussa to be correct, with Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Hungary, and possibly by 2017 the Baltic Sea. We strongly believe that Greece, as an entry point of LNG, is by far the most cost-efficient option for fostering energy security in southeastern Europe well before 2020. Our LNG terminal in Revithoussa has an excellent record of reliability, safety, and also, which is very important for the markets, affordability. Revithoussa has an excess regasification capacity of 4+ BCM per year, similar to the excess capacity of the proposed interconnector Greece-Bulgaria IGB, apart from the 1 BCM per year that Bulgaria is expected to receive from TAP. I don't like to get into details, but I would like to share with you this new energy factor, which can be a catalyst for more cooperation in a very troubled area of the planet. Now, let me refer very briefly, as I told you last week, I was in New York, and for a second consecutive year, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Greece, Mr. Venizelos, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cyprus, and the Egyptian Foreign Minister held a trilateral meeting on September 26th in New York. They had the opportunity to review developments in the region and to underline the importance of Eastern Mediterranean becoming a pillar of stability in the wider area by promoting cooperation among neighborhood countries, including in the energy field. Other topics that were discussed, the issue of Cyprus, of course, the Middle East peace process, Iraq, Syria, and Libya. Coming to the current explosive crisis with ISIS in the Middle East, foreign fighters joining jihadist terrorist organizations is a serious threat to regional and global security. As a member of the International Alliance Against ISIS and extremist jihadists, Greece fully supports the new Security Council resolution on how we, the international community, must act against ISIS and potential foreign fighters. We also note the grave humanitarian situation and increasing refugee pressure on countries of the region, including my own country, and of course Cyprus. But military means, my friends, alone cannot eliminate the jihadist threat. We must also promote an inclusive process of national dialogue in Iraq and reconciliation to counter this threat to the country's national unity and territorial integrity. And that's what we are doing along with our partners. We remain seriously concerned at the displacement of civilians, and we strongly condemn the systematic persecution of Christians and other religious communities in the area. When it comes to the dispute that exists with our northern neighbor, let me tell you that Greece is committed to the process initiated by the UN Secretary General through his personal envoy, Mr. Matthew Nimitz. Unfortunately, we see that the other party has no intention to move at all, and I can share with you not very much of optimism of the latest meetings we had in New York in the frame of the General Assembly of the United Nations. A few words about the economy, because unfortunately the elephant in the room in Greece is the economy, as you know. Despite the various challenges that we still face, we have started witnessing the first positive signs. In particular, we are probably aware that primary budget surplus and current account surplus, the return to growth, they are already with us. The fiscal consolidation effort that began 4 years ago is bearing fruit. Starting from very substantial twin deficits in the late 2000s, Greece has moved to twin surpluses in just 4 years. More specifically, in 2013, Greece achieved a remarkable and much higher than expected primary fiscal surplus of 1.86% of GDP, or if you want to count it in real money, 3.4 billion euros. This is quite an achievement. Another positive development was the current account surplus of 0.4% of GDP. In other words, we learn to live with what we earn. Of course, we have the huge debt, which is a big problem, and the people of Greece, first of all, through great sacrifices, and the government, they are trying to deal with this. It's not an easy problem. You know that from your visits in Greece, that the Greek society is struggling to come to terms with this terrible economic crisis. But we have hope. In 2015, we expect not only a primary surplus, but also a small fiscal surplus. All these things, they have been achieved through great sacrifice of the Greek people. We regain a limited but real access to the bond market again. And the public debt sustainability I think this is an issue we're going to deal in the very near future, and there are voices that we can succeed into this, working with our partners and lenders. So all in all, I would like to give you an image of hope and optimism, and I would like to underestimate the huge challenges that lay ahead of us, but we're resilient. We have been successful in so many battles in the past, and of course we're going to succeed right now. All the economic crises, they come to an end. The question is what kind of a country we're going to have tomorrow, a reformed country, the one we all envision for ourselves, our kids, a just state which is worth of ourselves and the next generations. I would like to thank you very much, and again extend my sincere thanks to AHI, the current president, Nikolai Yogakis, and our veteran fighter, Rossides. All the best to you. Thank you.
And now for the last speaker of the panel, that veteran fighter you just heard of, and somebody who needs no introduction, ladies and gentlemen, Eugene Rossides, or like to be referred to as Gene.
Thank you, Nick, ambassadors, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm not so sure how I should put this. I'm supposed to speak on the historical background. Well, I put the historical background in this book on Kissinger and Cyprus, A Study in Lawlessness. It took me 2 years, but I felt I had to put it into this book form so that it was permanent, the role, the ignoble role that Kissinger played regarding Cyprus in 1974 and thereafter, actually. I remember in July of '74, when the State Department, Tom Boyette, in early July was trying to tell Kissinger to stop the Greek junta who wanted to go after Makarios. Well, Kissinger didn't listen, and he encouraged the Greek junta to take a coup against Makarios on July 15 and attempted assassination. Here's the Secretary of State of the United States encouraging an assassination of the head of another country. Well, miraculously, Makarios escaped, and then later that week, on the 19th, he spoke at the UN, but during that week, Kissinger then encourages Turkey to invade Cyprus. And how does he do that? Well, on the 15th, when they had an emergency session of the UN on Cyprus, he gets it postponed till Friday, downgrading the issue and the publicity. And on Tuesday, the 16th, he tells our ambassador in Cyprus to meet with the foreign minister of the Samson coup government. Worse, on the 17th, he leaks to the New York Times that the U.S. is leaning towards Samson government, although no final decision has been made. And that story appeared on the front page, lead article in the New York Times on the 18th. And that gave Turkey the excuse, because they had an antipathy to the Samson regime, to invade on Saturday, which they did on the 20th. At any rate, this book lays out what Kissinger did then and throughout the months of August and September and October regarding the Cyprus issue. I remember what happened on the, let me give you some, on the 20th, was a Saturday, on the 22nd, I went with Makarios, President Makarios, to the State Department. He was meeting with Kissinger. And I went and met with Bob McCluskey, a deputy to Kissinger at that time. And while they were meeting, I said to Bob, I said, you know, you've got to stop the aid because the law is clear that with Turkey's use of our arms illegally in Cyprus. And then Bob McCluskey says to me, well, we'll look into it. When he said, we'll look into it, I knew that they weren't going to do anything. And that's when I decided we had to form an organization to lobby, and I formed the American Hellenic Institute on August 1 of '74, and we worked thereafter on this issue. But Kissinger, throughout that period of September, October, November, we had 12 votes in the US Congress. We went around the country. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. And we had, I remember, I was just recently in LA. What they did in Los Angeles, they set up a phone system. And people in the Southern California area called into that telephone, and the answer would be, you vote yes or you vote no on the current bill that was coming up. And 12 votes, we forced the issue and the arms embargo on Cyprus. I will end my remarks and wait for any questions that you may have, but it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have an extraordinary event on our hands here. We have approximately 25 minutes for Q&A, probably unheard of on a Greek American panel. So with that, as you think of your questions and you walk to the microphone, I'll use my privilege as moderator of this panel to ask the first question, if I may. And I'd like to direct it to Ambassador Chacalli. Mr. Ambassador, last week, of course, was the UN General Assembly in New York. President Rossides was here, and he had an opportunity to meet with a number of members in our U.S. administration. Can you share with us any comments that you can? I don't know to what degree these comments are off the record, or the discussion was off the record or not, but if you can just give us some background as to what transpired with some of these meetings in New York with members of the administration.
Thanks, Nick. I can't go into too many details. Suffice it to say that the meetings, both with Secretary Kerry and with the Vice President, were held in a very, very friendly atmosphere. And both pledged US support in our efforts to advance the process as much as possible on our part. They also stressed that they would be doing their utmost in the direction of the Turkish Cypriots and of the Turkish government. And we look forward now to the arrival of the new UN Special Representative, Mr. Aide, who will start working on the process to see how we can advance on whatever is pending on the ground.
No questions from the audience? I'll have to ask another question then of the ambassador. Obviously, negotiations is something that everyone has agreed to regarding moving the process forward and into a final settlement. Can you give us a little bit of background as to where these negotiations stand today?
No.
Is that the yes or no vote of Mr. Z's?
I'm not privy to information on where the negotiations are, and in any case, it's been agreed between the two leaders that nothing will be made public as far as where the negotiations stand. So, if you have a question, ask my leader.
I would like to make a comment regarding that, Nick, if I may.
Please.
The negotiations, in my view, are going to go nowhere. And the importance is that the U.S. should be publicly going after Turkey to get its troops and settlers out of Cyprus, and to tell Turkey, have the negotiations in good faith and stay out of them. That's the only way the negotiations will succeed. But the U.S. has to publicly go after Turkey and literally to isolate Turkey, and the U.S. should be calling for sanctions against Turkey until it gets its troops and settlers out of Cyprus. NATO should be doing the same, because it's in violation of the NATO agreement.
But before Nick asks a question, if you have a question, just walk to the microphone and just wait in line behind the next person. You don't need to wait until it's over.
Yeah, Nick Karambalis. This question is for Jean. Jean, at the time of the arms embargo, can you describe the type of support there was in Congress and who were the major figures who caused the arms embargo to be imposed to begin with?
Yes. You happy to. We had a situation well, there were three of them. On the Democratic side was John Bradamus, who was the deputy whip of the Democratic Party in the House, and Paul Sarbanes, who was a congressman at that time. Now everybody talks as if it was those two that did it and so on. Well, it was, yes, but it was also without the help of a Republican, we would never have won. And that was Ed Derwinski of Chicago, a friend that I had known and campaigned with from 1960 on. And he led the effort with the Republicans and got 40 Republican votes when we had those 12 votes during that fall.
Yeah, Bill Camarinos from Alexandria, Virginia. Is there any linkage between Cyprus and Smyrna? The Turks were eminently successful in the massacre that occurred in Smyrna. And do they intend to give up something that they have in their hands where they were so successful in Smyrna? Should they give something up? Will they negotiate? I sincerely doubt it. Will they do anything on behalf of the entire population of Cyprus? I doubt it. Could you please comment upon this? Is there any linkage between Smyrna rather, and Cyprus?
Speaking for myself, I don't see any connection between the two, and I agree with you that Turkey will do nothing on its own. There has to be pressure. There has to be public pressure, and it's not enough for the U.S. to talk about, oh, we'll get the two sides together to talk in Cyprus. We've got to go after the U.S. Anytime you speak to a U.S. official, you should ask them to publicly go after Turkey regarding Cyprus.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is there's a track record here that goes way back to Turkey regarding its aggressive nature regarding the Christian world, if you will, certainly the Greek world and others at the time, and that's been shown from time to time. And it's not a matter of what they want. It's a matter of that they perpetrated an illegal act here. It's the legal invasion, illegal occupation, violation of a number of international protocols. And it's up to us in the Western world, okay, to continue to press home the fact that the rule of law has been violated here. We either live in the rule of law or we live in the rule of jungle. And we cannot make exceptions along the way. And that's what we need to keep pushing forward as it relates to Cyprus at least.
My name is Ethan Manuel from here in Washington, and for any of the panelists, do you sense any fatigue from the U.S. with Turkey? When you look at the way the Turks have misplayed their relationship with Israel, and now with Syria, they were kind of letting ISIS use their borders and go into Syria, and now they've changed their mind. But is there any growing fatigue, you think, among the U.S. diplomatic community with Turkey's actions on the international scene? That could help, obviously, the Cyprus situation.
Well, I think this afternoon when we have Dan Locke from the State Department here, it would be a good question to ask him as it relates to that. Certainly, if you read articles in the press, and if you speak to people at the State Department, you do feel this situation of frustration regarding Turkey for sure. But at the end of the day, it still seems to be business as usual. And although we've had some great comments over the course of the last months from Vice President Biden, from visitations of some high leaders from the State Department, Amanda Sloat, Victoria Nuland, James Townsend, and others to Cyprus, and all the rhetoric is good. And yet, Mr. Erdogan, in his first official state visit abroad, quote unquote, was to the occupied area and started proclaiming two-state solutions. Well, that's just a non-starter. But there's silence from Foggy Bottom, there's silence from our administration. So I don't know what that tells you, but that's a question I intend to ask Dan Long this afternoon, and he may want to do it before I do.
I would add to that it's not a question of fatigue. It's a question of appeasement of Turkey for years and years and years, and the need to change that appeasement to an attack on Turkey by the U.S. in the interest of the U.S., not in the interest of Cyprus or Greece. It's in the interest of the U.S. to brace Turkey.
Let me comment on this for a moment. Certainly there do exist big differences between Washington and Ankara. The question for us is to follow a policy. We do follow a policy which is consistent. We are in the Western community. we share the same vision for the area, more or less, with our American partners and NATO partners, and we're consistent in supporting these principles and these policies. Turkey, on the other side, is taking the Western agenda, let me say, a la carte. That creates a lot of nervousness here in Washington among mid-level elements of the administration, the Congress, also the Pentagon. They would like to see a different approach, certainly on certain issues. But permit me to say that Turkey plays its card being the proximity of this terrible crisis that's going on, and persuades, quote unquote, you take it the way you want, that they have, big leverage there. Some of them is real, some of that is imaginary. The matter of the fact is that the two countries, they do cooperate with problems. For us, as Greece, I believe the same happens with Cyprus, but I'm here to speak on Greece. We follow consistently our principles and our policies defined by our national security, and this is to bring peace and stability to the region, and also overcome the economic crisis, which is going to, imagine Greece goes through an economic crisis. For the area, it's going to take years and years to bring some kind of economic stability before, of course, you have to restore some kind of political stability. So the task is very huge. We have to join forces. What can I tell you is that Greece, along with Cyprus and Israel, they share fully the Western agenda with our American partners. For Turkey, and that's not something against Turkey, Turkey opted to do otherwise, to pick up a la carte the issues. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, if I may, because you had sort of follows this question a little bit. You made sort of a broad statement regarding your country's agenda. ISIS, obviously, it seems to be, and this is from Ambassador Panagopoulos, ISIS is on everyone's mind. Can you tell us a little bit in terms of right now what is the role of Greece as it relates to ISIS, and what have you been asked specifically, if anything, from the coalition, and what is the role right now of Greece in this response?
Thank you, Nick. I'll be happy to answer this. As you know, President Obama took the initiative, and scores of countries, they follow through to create, because of the magnitude of the problem and the viciousness that ISIS is seeking to achieve its goals, scores of countries, they follow through this Obama initiative. So, as we speak, there are more than 50 countries that they joined forces against ISIS. Greece, I hope you are aware that participates in this huge alliance. It's to our interest as a neighbor in the area, but from the point of view of a principal policy also, to combat these forces of darkness. What we're trying to do now is to assist on the humanitarian level, which is huge. You know that lots of people, scores of people are displaced, and they come in an unorderly way to the neighboring countries, including my own country. So we have every interest to join forces with European partners and American partners and all the countries of the area that can assist. But also, we see that we should support the forces that they can fight right there, ISIS forces. And as you know, we offer to give ammo that we do have in Greece, make them available to the Syrian opposition fighters. This process is underway right now. We notify our partners that we are willing to do that. And as things are developing, we might see, but for the time being, this is on the humanitarian level, and making available this ammo things. Of course, within NATO and the European Union, we do follow very closely all the developments with our partners.
Thank you. Leon Andrus, a question to the Ambassador Chacalli and also to you, Nick. We all remember the Vice President back in his days in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as being a great friend of Greece and of Cyprus. As Vice President, he's kind of was put on ice, so to speak, as things go, because the State Department was mostly handling everything. It was nice to get old Joe back in his latest efforts. And I know, Nick, you met with the Vice President. He asked for a meeting of the Greek leaders before and after the meetings in Cyprus. I'd like to know a little bit more specifics. I mean, we all read what we read about it, but all in generalities. How the conduct of those meetings, what you take from them, and really where things stand right now in terms of staying on his radar screen.
Well, the meetings were off the record, Leon, but the first time that I've been here, it's the first time I've ever been called to the White House to get in a discussion regarding any one of our issues. And it was true, we had about 6 or 7 leaders of our community there, and we had a long discussion, including with some of his key staff people, national security and European affairs, and some people from the State Department were there as well in both sessions. And combined, each session lasted for close to an hour and a half. The first one, I think, and the second meeting was almost 2 hours. Not the Vice President being there the entire time, but he was there a good time for both sessions, almost an hour for both sessions. He asked a lot of things, and more importantly, his comments that he made on the record in Philadelphia, where he talked about the occupation forces, that need to leave. He's made more comments regarding Cyprus, regarding its right to explore in this economic exclusive zone. These are all good comments, and others that he said, which I can't say completely everything that he mentioned. The bottom line is he said a lot of good things in the meeting. Joe Biden, more than anyone else, understands the nuances of this issue because, as you mentioned, he goes way back. He was one of the original fighters on the embargo fight back in '74, and through his efforts on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as chairman, along with Senator Sarbanes and others, who were very instrumental to keeping this issue alive on Capitol Hill, and knows the nuances of this issue. And for the first time in his capacity as Vice President, came out and said a number of these things that no other Vice President has said, to my knowledge, in the last 4 decades, including, of course, his historic visit to Cyprus, where he reiterated some of these comments. At the end of the day, the rhetoric is good, but we still have an occupation on Cyprus. We still have illegal colonists on Cyprus. And as I said earlier, more recently, you've had Mr. Erdogan go there and call for 2-state solutions, and I've seen no reaction from him, any other elements of the White House, and or the State Department. And it's important to note, although as important as the comments of Mr. Biden are, or Vice President Biden are, I don't know if they're actual policy, and I don't think they are yet, because we don't hear them being said by the President, or we don't hear them saying by the President. So unless I hear it from the President, as I wrote in a column, it's trust but verify in terms of what is forthcoming here regarding down the road. But it seems the timing is right. All the elements are in place. Turkey's behaving like a rogue state again. Our interests are threatened, and the countries that are there in the frontline state to project our interests for strategic cooperation are Cyprus, Greece, and Israel. Those are the 3 democratic nations that can only play the role in a very volatile region all around the Middle East right now. And part of that is to be able to have a united, free, and safe Cyprus with the removal of the troops, removal of the colonists, and in one country.
Mr. Ambassador, were you a participant in any of those talks in Cyprus? Anything you'd like to share?
Great community here. No, I fully share what Nick has to say. I think he spoke very fully about this.
This question is primarily for Ambassador Chacalli, and the concern that I have is how concerned is the Republic of Cyprus about the expansion of ISIS into the occupied area of Cyprus? And I ask this question for 2 reasons. One is there is a map on one of the ISIS websites which shows a crescent from Turkey through Lebanon, through Israel into Egypt, and then it shows Cyprus as the star in the crescent. The second reason I ask that is located in the Republic of Cyprus in Larnaca is the third holiest mosque in all of Islam. That's the Teki Sultan Haram, and that's where traditionally either Muhammad's aunt or his wet nurse, no one's really sure, is buried. She entered Cyprus when Cyprus was conquered by Muslims in 650 AD, and then she was subsequently killed when she was thrown off her mule. Levity aside, what concern does the Republic have about, because there also are Imam Hateps, meaning religious schools being established that even the Turkish Cypriots are concerned about. Thank you.
Well, in the occupied part, as you know, the government cannot exercise any control. So there is concern, especially in view of the fact that people come and go from Turkey without the authorities of the Republic being able to control. The Muslim element, of course, is present there. So we are very much concerned about what is going on and what is beyond our own physical control. And that's why we have aligned ourselves fully with the Western Alliance against ISIS. We are part of the countries that have offered ammunition to the opposition against ISIS. We are also part of the humanitarian effort that is going on. And we are working very closely with both the US and with the British through their military bases in Cyprus to help the West as much as possible. That's all we can do. We are at the forefront of this. We are very much geographically close. So the concern is very great. We're trying to do whatever we can to minimize the risk.
This will be the last question, Bill.
Yes. Do we have to wait for another generation to come forth for some of these huge issues to be resolved? And I'm looking at it in an interesting way, and I'd like a commentary. I'm a retired Army officer, former IBMer, and in my third life, I'm a teacher of English as a second language. I've been teaching at the American School in Switzerland, Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, and I've had students from all over the world. The best students are the Turkish kids. They are the most conscientious, and they are terrific kids. And when you engage them in discussion of other things, it seems to me this is the new generation of Turkey. Do we have to wait for these kids to become adults in order for these issues to come to the forefront?
Well, thanks to Ataturk for changing the Turkish language and making it more English-like. So that's what, I don't know, Bill. What can I tell you? I can't speak for that generation, but I guess our generation better take care of this right now. And that generation is us here today in this room, in this town, and those who advocate on a daily basis for these issues that's within the interest of the United States. As we're Americans, we believe in this relationship. Vice President Biden did say Cyprus is a strategic partner now. It is, it always has been. Now they woke up one day and they realized it. Energy is going to be a major role in this, and the continuation of the relationship between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus is only going to help further in our cause to be able to ultimately solve this issue moving forward. But this generation has to take care of it, and we can't pass the buck, as Harry Truman said. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks to this panel. And now if I can have Jim Marcandos come up and to carry us into the second panel, please.